You're listening to the IB4E Coaching Podcast.
Brought to you by IB4E Coaching, business coaching for executives, entrepreneurs, and small business professionals. Learn more at ib4e-coaching.com.
Hey, Coach Harlan here. Welcome back to the podcast. Hope you guys are having an exceptional week. I'm having a great week, and I'm excited to introduce you to my guest today. Please help me welcome Ryan Christensen. Ryan Christensen is a hypnotist and author focusing on peak mental performance, emotional resilience, and life satisfaction. Ryan leverages his decades of experience in the military, counterterrorism, and counter-proliferation worlds to dive deep and rapidly identify the core beliefs holding his clients back. Ryan, I'm fascinated to dive into this. Thank you, sir, for being on the show.
Outstanding. Thank you for having me here. It's an honor to be.
Yeah, no, this is good stuff. So your background in the military, counterterrorism and counter-proliferation. How did that prepare you for or drive you to focusing on peak mental performance?
So it's an interesting journey. For me, it's, I've been an intelligence officer my entire career, right, for about 23 years. In the Marine Corps as a linguist, in the Air National Guard, I was doing support for like F-16, F-22 fighter planes, Predators, and U-2, stuff like that. And then as a contractor in DC for about 16 years. So it's always been about figuring out the stuff that people doesn't want us to know. Getting out your hands on all the right information, putting the puzzle together, figuring out what things looks like. And as soon as you understand what that looks like, okay, how do I break it? Right. And that's just kind of how I've been approaching the world for quite a while. It turns out I have autism, did get diagnosed until I was almost 48. And growing up in Kansas in the 70s, 80s, nobody has any idea what's wrong with you. Right. This is pre-internet days, and you're in Kansas like that's just nobody has any idea. So I had to essentially figure out how to do all this stuff on my own. And the way you guys say that the world works and you do all these interactions and the rules of the game are not how you people play the game. At all. Yeah. Right. There's the explicit rules. Here's your employee manual, right? When you get your new job, here's the employee manual. You take that thing, you chuck it in the trash. It's like, all right, Bob, how does things really work? Right. But nobody could tell me how things really worked. Right. So I essentially had to watch the whole thing play out, identify the patterns, reverse engineer what the heck was going on. So I've been doing that my entire life. Just kind of weaponize that talent in the intelligence world. But once I realized that, I've spent 23 years trying to save the world and the world doesn't want to be saved, clearly I'm in the wrong line of business. And that's sort of when I started pivoting and helping people one-on-one. Doing a lot of work on myself at the same time, kind of trying to figure out what was wrong with my head. This is before I got diagnosed with the autism, so it's still a big question. And that whole process of helping clients and trying to sort my own stuff out really kind of dove into the subconscious mind and how these beliefs come about and how they shape our perceptions and our reality and how we respond to the world. And it's like, okay, this is where the big meat is that the big lever that I can use to really shift things for myself. So let's get to it.
Yeah. And those deep-seated beliefs are what drive us or direct us. And we a lot of times blame ourselves for what we're feeling. And I love the way your book goes into it and says, that's a false belief. Here's how it really works. And I love that. I want to dive into all that. Like I said, I've got a ton of questions for you, and I wish we had a lot of time. I may have to have you on the program 2 or 3 times to get through all this stuff. I am very much enjoying your book, and we'll talk about that. Before we go any further, I've got some questions that I like to ask each one of my guests. Now, listeners, you guys know these are the questions made famous on the TV show Inside the Actor's Studio, where the host James Lipton asks these questions of his Hollywood guests from TV, film, and stage. And I figure if they're good enough for the Hollywood elite, they're certainly good enough for my guests. So, Ryan, if you're okay, we've got 10 quick questions for you.
Let's roll.
All right. Question number 1. What is your favorite word?
It was serendipity.
Nice.
I love that one.
Nice. What is your least favorite word?
God, I have no idea. Squish comes to mind. Just right. Just kind of makes you cringe a little bit, doesn't it?
Yeah. It's not quite as bad as moist, but squish will do. Yeah. Yes, absolutely. All right. What turns you on?
Chemistry and connection.
Very good. What turns you off?
False, like a fake facade. That surface level stuff that just a complete lie. Hate it.
Yeah. What sound or noise do you love?
Waves hitting the beach or rocks.
Nice. And what sound or noise do you hate?
Oh, freaking smoke alarm, fire alarms with a passion.
All right. What is your favorite curse word?
Oh, rhymes with duck, the most versatile word in the world.
The most versatile word in the world. Absolutely. All right. What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
Skydiving instructor. Why? Just
Nice.
because, I mean, I've been skydiving twice and it seems like a lot of fun and it seems like those guys just have a blast.
Oh, yeah.
So if I get paid to do that, like, yes, I could do that.
Nice. Yeah, there's a place down here that we went to, and it's almost like a commune. They all live in the hangars, and yeah, awesome. All right, what profession would you not like to do?
Politician.
Thank you. Absolutely. All right, final question. Ryan, if heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Good job.
Good job. Absolutely.
That one hit.
Very
Wow.
cool. Yeah. No, and you have done some amazing things and
Thank you.
continue to do. So I think you're well on your way to that. All right. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, we're going to talk about your background again. How'd you get started? How you got to the point you are. We're going to talk about your book. Some of the concepts you bring up in your book are fascinating. Love to dive into that even more. And then at some point we'll transition into courage and leadership. All right.
Sounds good.
Okay, listeners, we'll talk about all that and probably a lot more right after this, so stick with us. And I'm back with my guest, Ryan Christensen. Ryan, thanks again for being on the podcast. I've been looking forward to this. I've got your book. I haven't gotten that far in because we just talked a week or so ago, but I'm loving the approach. Love this. So let's start off the early years, right?
Sure.
Where'd you grow up? Did you have a good childhood? Were you into sports? What was childhood like?
Oh, yeah, I grew up in Kansas, a town called Wichita. It's about 300,000 people. Like to say it's a great place to live, but I wouldn't want to visit there. Kind of on the boring side, But, grew up in a little cul-de-sac right when it first started. We moved in there right when it was getting built up. So there's a group of us, about 5 or 6 families, have been there for like freaking 20 years. So all the kids grew up together. I basically had like 7 moms, right? And it was a pretty good childhood, running around, going on adventures, riding bikes everywhere, like having dirt clodboards and construction sites. It was great, right? The problem was, like I mentioned earlier, I was autistic and had no idea. And so it's basically like the world works just fine for everybody else and not for me. Like everybody else is able to figure it out. Everybody else is able to get what they want. Everybody else is able to make those friendships and connections and everything else, and just like not me. It just does not work at all. Couldn't figure it out, And so by the time 4th grade rolls around, like I'm basically flunking out of 4th grade because I'm just straight up giving up on life. It's the first time I wanted to actually end my life. I was probably about 9 years old. It's rough, just, there's something wrong. You can't figure it out. Nobody can help you. Nobody can figure it out. But fortunately, one of my teachers was like, hey, he's really smart. You need to get him into gifted program. So it took me out of Catholic school to put me in a public school where they had a gifted program. And that probably saved my life, quite frankly, because even though they didn't know what autism was, I was around a lot of other small gifted people. At least I was closer to my peer group, closer to people who operated with me, operated the way I want to, right? And so that's what I did for like 16, 17, 18 years. Went to college, had a full ride scholarship, academic scholarship. Spent the entire first year of my college run. I was not a good student. I was just bored, right? I was just bored. Classes bored me, so I just did whatever instead. Kind of bummed around for a little bit, trying to figure out what I want to do, and just realized that Kansas was just not the right place for me at all. Need to get out. So 21 years old, I go ahead and join the Marine Corps, sent off, to boot camp, get to Monterey, California, learn Russian for about a year and a half. Stationed out in Hawaii. It's where I met my first wife in language school. We had a couple kids, got divorced not too long after I got back from the Marines. And after that, spent a couple of years kind of trying to figure out what I wanted to do. Ended up getting picked up by a company in DC doing counter-terrorism, counter-proliferation work for about 16 years. Transitioned into hypnosis at the beginning of 2020.
Nice. Hypnosis. How was that something that they wanted to get you involved in, or is that something you chose?
No, I was like, oh, you're doing the intel stuff and you're playing with people's minds. Like, no. My job was more like trying to figure out like where the terrorists were and make them go away, or trying to figure out who's trying to get nuclear weapons and make sure they don't get that. No, the hypnosis thing was actually, I started doing a lot of work on myself in like late 2019. I'd gotten divorced a second time in beginning of 2018. Was in a relationship for about a year and a half, and then started dating again, and was just like, the DC dating market sucks, and I was just like having really hard times. All right, clearly there's something I need to figure out here because I'm doing this wrong. So I got in a couple of groups, men's groups, working on dating and self-improvement. And one of those groups, there's a guy talking about like toxic shame and emotional baggage. And I'm like, well, raised Catholic, got some of that. And he's like, did a session or two. And it's like, oh, just feel lighter. Carry around 50 pounds of stuff, get rid of 20 pounds, everything's easier, right? And it's at that same time I was trying to figure out what I'm going to do next, because I'm clearly in the wrong line of business. I thought about becoming a psychologist, but that'd be like 6 years and $500,000, unappealing in your 40s, right? I wouldn't even be started in my career at that point if I'd gone down that road. But I could get certified as a hypnotist for like $2,000 in 6 weeks. I'm going to go ahead and just dip my toes in, see if this is what I want. So I got certified in February of 2020. And right after that, everything shuts down. And I can't work from home because everything I do is classified. So I got nothing but time on my hand, right? So I ended up starting to work with some guys in groups and realized I had a talent for it. Got some more training, do some more of the sort of targeted, directed, figure stuff out instead of the normal suggestion-based stuff. Started my business in April 2020 and went full-time in October. It's like I realized I was working 80, 90-hour weeks trying to juggle in both jobs. And it's like, I got to pick one. And this is a lot more interesting and more filling, so I'm going to do this instead. But it's really that whole idea of trying to figure out why things were working the way they were. It's like, okay, I'm doing a certain pattern of behavior. There's certain things I'm doing constantly over and over again. Why? Right? Because there's a pattern of behavior, there's a pattern of anything, there's something that drives it. There's a mechanism that generates that. Okay, cool. So if I can see the pattern, then I can start digging in to figure out what the black box is, what the algorithm is, drives that thing. Fair enough. And understanding that all that stuff in your subconscious mind, understanding your mind knows exactly what it's doing and why. It's like, why am I guessing? You've got all the information. I know exactly where it is. I can get access to it. And I'm an intel guy. Good luck hiding, right? So it's just all the pieces of puzzle in there. I just need to figure out how to get them out and how to put the pieces of puzzle together, right? So it was very, very easy for me to start working on these ideas about limiting beliefs. And just over time, as I sort of refined my methodology and understood more about the mind, I started looking at larger scale beliefs, right? This is a big thing that I think that I came up with or kind of got to that I don't really see very often. Kind of a left brain versus right brain perspective, right? Okay. Left brain is very individual details, individual issues, individual events, individual traumas. Right brain is looking at patterns over time, so looking at the forest rather than the trees. And because we're looking at reality through both lenses simultaneously at all times, we're coming up with two different sets of conclusions, two different perspectives, right? And so that right brain pattern-based matching machine has its own set of beliefs, which are separate from the ones we create on kind of an individual detail-oriented perspective, right? Things look different from the ground than they do from the air.
Right.
But because we don't explore those at that scale from that perspective, those things keep playing out. So if you got this idea of I'm not good enough, it's sort of like a meta-narrative, meta-belief, high-level, force-level view. Sure, I'm good enough in this way, but what about this and this and this and this? No, it's just I'm not good enough as a meta-perspective being applied to a bunch of different situations. But that has a structure, that has a logic chain that created it. Why not figure that one out, take it apart, and rebuild it? Because if we can go from I'm not good enough as a meta-perspective to I am good enough as a meta-belief, well, a lot of this stuff down here that you have to deal with, you don't have to deal with anymore because you're applying the right frame from the beginning.
Right. Wow. And so your military background helped you see those patterns.
Yeah, definitely part of it.
Dig in and right? And see and ask those questions and keep diving in and stuff.
In a lot of ways, it was kind of the autistic adaptation that I made, or adaptation I had to make in order to navigate the world with autism. I've just got a very analytical brain to begin with, and I see those patterns very easily because I've been doing that since childhood. That's how I had to figure out how people worked and how social stuff worked. Mm-hmm. It just got weaponized essentially in the military and in the intelligence community. So you took that and cranked that up to 12, and now you give me access to the back of your head. Good luck hiding.
Well, but being able to read the room, right? That's one thing I've heard other people talk about. Autism, ADHD, you have to create your own workarounds for things. Yeah. You have to create your own, but to be able to read the room and know who's a enemy, who's a friend, who can help, who's it happens very quickly for you, where it would probably take me a while to really understand what's going on because I'm not seeing things the same way you are. Yeah,
100%. But then again, there's a lot of nuance and detail and richness to social interactions and human interactions that you guys get to see that I can't. Right? It's kind of like I was talking with a guy and kind of about my experience. And he's like, "Oh yeah, I totally understand what you're saying." I was like, "I'm colorblind." I'm like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Well, because he can't perceive all that nuance and difference between the colors, he sees all these patterns and the shapes so much easier. That stuff just pops right out to him because he's not distracted by all that detail." Right? You guys get distracted by all this detail because you can see all this stuff and can appreciate it. Right? It's like if I'm going to a wine club. There's all these sommeliers there talking about the terroir and the tannins and the backs and the fruits and yada yada. I'm like, okay, cool, yeah, this in fact does taste like red wine, and I like this red wine better than that red wine. And you're like, guys, a lot of that stuff just doesn't matter to me because I can't even sense it, I can't taste it, I don't have the palate for it, right? So I get some advantages. So I can see the higher level perspective extremely easy. Don't really get to enjoy some of the richness that you guys do.
Nice. So your book, Winner
Mm-hmm.
Peace, How to End Inner Conflict and Make Success Inevitable. Um, the thing I like about this is we all deal with that, um, the fix ourselves, right?
Yeah.
That, and I mean, we've gone through several stages of this, we're asked and all these other things,
Yeah.
you're the problem, fix yourself and the world will open up to you. And you
Yes.
challenge that it's not about fixing ourselves. What do we
Yeah.
do instead?
Well, fundamentally, there's two different pieces. Like, number one, I'm really getting to the point where I think that this idea of emotional pain is kind of like the original sin of self-improvement, right? Where, if your hand hurts, you're supposed to look at your hand because that's the thing that's busted, right? So if we feel all this emotional pain inside, problem's got to be inside us. So we start looking at ourselves, right? And also, like, from a child development standpoint, up until a certain point, you can't even really think of other people as other people. You're just you. So you're extremely egocentric for quite a while as you're trying to understand the world. So it's really to start blaming yourself as the problem, right? The difficulty is, like, I have ADHD, I have bipolar disorder, I'm autistic. This thing is wired the way it is. There's absolutely nothing I can do about it, right? There's nothing I can do to change those things at all. And problems have solutions, but there's no solution to that. So that can't be the problem, okay? I am wired the way I'm wired. Given how I'm wired, how do I need to navigate the world to get what I want to survive and thrive? Like, that's really the problem. How do I fix this, okay? But when we're looking at ourselves as the problem, then we have to change who we are and what we are in order to get what we need. That's really hard to change who you are, right? We create these new identities. I'm going to be this other guy instead. Cool. But the rest of us saying that ain't really who you are, which is why all these insecurities and everything else still gets pushed. All those buttons still get pushed no matter how much work you try and be this. But once you can actually own and accept what you are, like without judgment, that this is who I am, right? It's like autism is not, some people say, oh, don't label yourself as autistic. That's a bad thing. It's like, no, I am autistic. That's what I am. It's like, oh, it's your superpower. It's like, no, this is very much a mixed blessing, right? So it's not about it being bad. It's not about it being good. It just is. This is what I am and who I am. This is how I'm wired, how I'm built. Fair enough. Let me just own that, right? At that point, it's a matter of understanding how you need to navigate the world and shift things and adapt to it, right? I've got to navigate it very differently being autistic. I've got to navigate it very differently being bipolar. But the other piece is understanding that 90% of our problems or more are just the things we believe, the conclusions we came to about, oh, this is who I am. This is how I work. This is how the world works. And those are just beliefs. They're just conclusions. They're just interpretations of the world. And that ain't who you are. That's just how you're understanding things and how you understand the world. Those are easy to change. And once you change those, how you interpret and respond to the world and how you navigate it becomes completely different. So we don't have to change us. We just have to change how we understand ourselves in the world.
Nice. And then how does one go about doing that? I mean, that sounds like a long, involved, year-long process, 20-year-long process.
Well, that's kind of how therapy works, right? Okay, let me dig in this, and let me dig in this, and let me dig in this, and let me dig in this. And I think that there are kind of all kinds of different facets to it, right? In my book, I kind of go into a 4-stage or 4-level model of the mind. Conscious mind, right, rational mind, emotional mind, got an instinctive mind, right? Instinctive mind is cares about physical survival. Emotional mind is looking at meaning. Rational mind is looking at how things work. Consciousness, that's kind of the CEO, director, right? And so you kind of have to understand things from each perspective because each of them have a different perspective on the world and a different set of beliefs, okay? If I think that relationships are supposed to work a certain way, I'm going to navigate relationships in that way. That's a rational, conscious framework, right? But I've also got all these things about who I am and my identity and my value that play in that as well. So even if I got a good framework for relationships and how they're supposed to work, if I don't think much of myself, I'm insecure and everything else, and neurotic and yada, yada, well, I'm not going to be able to have healthy relationships and navigate it well just because the rest of this stuff is messed up. But if this stuff is good, if I'm awesome, I love myself and so forth and so on, but my relationship model sucks, I also can't have healthy relationships, right? So you got to have to look at things from all those different perspectives. Now, when you're talking about these subconscious limiting beliefs, some of them are really easy to recognize, right? It's like, oh, I have issues around money. Oh, I have issues around self-esteem and so forth. So great. Some of that stuff you can do on your own, right? Because it's just, oh, I'm acting this way. Great. I just need to move through the world differently. On the other hand, some of that stuff, that deeper stuff, you really can't get to on your own. You really can't explore and understand on your own. And that's kind of stuff that I look at the most because this is stuff that keeps on showing up over and over again. It's that pattern over time, right? You're just not letting yourself succeed in life. And you're procrastinating and doing all this different stuff to keep yourself. Those are just tools your mind is using to keep you from this. You're not letting yourself have healthy relationships. Great. Here's all these different ways you're screwing that up. But ultimately, these are just tools that your mind is using to accomplish this goal. That, taking a look at that goal from that perspective is incredibly hard, right? Especially on your own, which is why, having somebody like me go in and take a look and actually do that for you makes a lot more sense, right?
And that's where the hypnosis piece comes in. You get people to kind of,
100%.
because I think our mind tries to protect itself, right? These are long-held beliefs. We don't want these to get rid of these, so they kind of protect them, bury them, or something like that. And then does the hypnosis help kind of open that up a little?
Well, kind of. I don't think that we try and protect our beliefs. I don't think that's actually what's happening. Hypnosis basically, in hypnotism, we think about this idea of something called the critical factor. It's kind of like the wall between the conscious and the unconscious mind. And one of the things about getting yourself into trances is it drops that wall. So I actually got more direct access to your unconscious mind, those deeper parts of you, right? Okay. So when we're having a conversation like this, it's all intermediated between consciousness. And so I don't actually have the ability to get right down there and get to truth. Once I open that door, I can go down there and start asking those questions. But it's not necessarily like, oh, I want to protect this belief and I want to protect this idea of myself. It's more that two things are happening. Number one of the biggest things your mind is trying to do is keep you away from emotional pain, keep you from experiencing emotional pain. And the vast majority of that is coming from this idea of who we are, our identity. It's like, well, I want to be successful so I can be good enough. Great. Why? Because I feel like I'm not good enough. So what your mind is doing is keeping away from situations that might push that button of I'm not good enough. I confirm that, right? Because that's painful. Got to keep you away from that. Fair enough. It's doing that mostly by pattern matching, right? The human mind is like the single most powerful pattern matching machine known to man, better than anything else. So it kind of saw a pattern of stuff in the past, in some ways, said, okay, this is a pattern and it means this, and therefore I should react to it in this way, right? Those patterns are valid. The meaning it's assigned to it and how it reacts to it may or may not be actually good or useful or helpful. But it saw the pattern and it has a way to react to it, and you're still breathing, so it works well enough, right? And if you look at things like concepts like hitting rock bottom is a situation where the coping mechanism strategy you're using has become a threat to your existence in the near term. And that's an important piece of this, because that part of your mind is looking at right now. It's like 1-2 second gap of time. Like that is the only thing it cares about. Right? It's the only thing it can perceive. It's what it's built to handle, which means it can't think about second, third order effects. It can't look at long-term impacts of stuff that it's doing. Can't. Because it only cares about this. So it's like, I feel sad, I eat a donut, I feel better, great solution. Until I'm depressed for a year, now I'm 350 pounds, got a completely different set of problems. But it can't see that impact. It can't see that follow-on impact. It's always looking at right now. So a lot of solutions we create and a lot of trouble is like just a time scale mismatch, right? Really good short-term solution, really bad long-term impact.
Right. We don't look at the long-term all the time.
Well, that part of us can't. Yeah, part of us can't. So until you bring that long-term impact into the present and force it to deal with it, now it just can't understand that there's a problem. So this working, I'm avoiding the pain, and you're still breathing. What are you worried about? Like, why are you whining?
What are you worried about?
Doing my job here. What are you worried about?
Exactly. All right. So the four minds, again, the conscious mind, the rational mind, the emotional mind, and the instinctive mind.
Yes.
Which one sabotages people the most? Or is there one that kind of takes front and center when we're talking about some of the issues people deal with?
Personally, I don't think that self-sabotage is the thing. I think it's a perspective problem. Okay. We've consciously decided, I want this. Fair enough. This is what I'm trying to create. Fair enough. And we call things self-sabotage of anything we do that gets in the way of getting this thing that we want. Fair enough. But consciousness is only one of the four minds. And you've got your physical body, you got your neurochemistry, you got all this other stuff you too. Great. The rest of you gets a vote. The rest of you have needs as well. Right. So quite frankly, if you're not getting what you want, you're getting what you need. Right. A lot of that self-sabotage is our mind trying to keep us away from the emotional pain. Why? Because it's too dangerous. So it's protecting you. You don't get what you want because you have to have this other priority of keeping yourself safe instead. Is that incredibly frustrating? Yes. But it's frustrating because we don't understand everything that's happening, or we don't want to give it credence, or we don't want to give it credit, right? Typically, I think that the biggest problems we're facing, the stickiest ones, are down in that emotional mind and the instinctive mind, right? The emotional mind is the part of us that cares about meaning, right? It's the part of us that's doing that rapid pattern matching along with the instinctive mind, right? And the emotions that we feel, that we experience, are the output of that part of us saying, this is the way I'm interpreting, this is what I'm trying to solve, this is what I'm dealing with. which is why that stuff is so hard to shift, because it's like, no, I'm seeing this pattern. This is real. Why are you not listening? Yes, you can prove it wrong, but you're looking at trees, not the forest. You don't actually understand the perspective and the scale. So that mismatch between the rational and the emotional, the trees and the forest, where we feel comfortable playing in the place we really don't want to be, is what causes all the problems, because we think there's only one truth or there's only one correct answer. That's not the case. If you're looking at things through two different lenses simultaneously, you can come up with two completely different answers that are both 100% true and correct at the same time, even if they're completely opposite. Right?
Yeah, So I've seen an image like that where light shining from this side of an object casts a circular shadow on the wall, and one coming from this side, it's a square, right? It's just how are you looking at it? What's the
100%. Yeah, 100%. And you're seeing it through both lenses at the same time, all the time. Yeah.
And this is everybody. This is not just
Yes.
ADHD or autistic. Everybody
No,
has.
this is 100%. Everybody does. Exactly. Because that's how your mind's designed to work, right? Yeah. That pattern matching machine is essentially saying, okay, what kind of situation am I in? Perfect. I now understand the situation I'm in. I'm start moving. And then the rest of you is catching up, because this part of your mind is a heck of a lot faster, right? But the interpretation from that point on is you're doing it within this frame it's set, right? This is the kind of situation I'm dealing with. I'm starting to act. And all the detailed stuff, it's like, okay, now that I'm in this situation, what's going on? Oh, these details mean I'm not in this situation. I'm in this other situation. Right? Fair enough. But you're having to fight and disprove that initial conclusion first, which is why it's so important to get this thing right, so that initial framing is correct or in line with what you want to be doing and who you want to be, so that you don't have to do the fighting down here. You're in harmony, right? So a lot of the work that I'm doing is kind of aligning the understandings across both scales, so you're both using the same playbook to analyze stuff and move through forward, right? Because if you do that, then the friction isn't there. That's why it's all about removing internal friction, removing internal conflict. Get everybody on the same freaking sheet of music, all on the same team, moving in the same direction, going for the same goal.
Wow. So how does somebody go about permanently shifting their perspective? Negative emotions, trauma, self-sabotage.
Yeah.
I mean, trauma is real. The self-sabotage is real. But how do you get them to see that different perspective and then shift their mind?
Well, that's kind of one of the beautiful things about hypnosis. Hypnosis has been used for like pain control since the beginning. You know, the lady who taught me hypnosis first, she gets migraines. If you know anything about migraines, it sucks. There's nothing you can do about it. But she's a hypnotist. So when she gets a migraine, she just drops herself in a trance, goes in the back of her head, turns down the dial on pain from 9 to 3, just goes about her day. Right? There's something called hypnobirthing. It's using hypnosis for pain control during childbirth.
I've heard of that yet.
Kate Middleton, wife of Prince William of England, access best medical in the world, care in the world. All 3 of her kids, hypnobirthing. Hypnosis instead of like medical care, right? Mentor of mine had a client who had really bad back issues. A truck driver, over the course of the day, just mess him up, just too much pain. So they changed the sensation of pain from pain into heat. So over the course of the day, instead of his back getting more and more painful, it just got warmer and warmer. So he knew it was time to take a break and take care of himself, but it wasn't a distressing signal, right? So hypnosis is phenomenal for helping our minds reinterpret signals or process signals and our experience in a different way. That's why I love it, using it for reframing emotional pain. If I can change the physical pain, why can't I change the emotional pain? I don't see a reason why not to, so might as well. And it's really important to kind of do that, because while the emotions are pain, you're triggering that survival part of your mind. You're triggering that instinctive part of your mind. It says, this is a threat to my physical existence, because it is. It has to monitor and shape your mood, because emotions can kill. In 2023, in the United States, over 300,000 people died from suicide, alcohol abuse, drug overdoses, deaths of despair. How people felt ended over 300,000 lives in the United States in 2023 alone. And that's the only people who passed away. Not everybody else's lives were ruined just because of this stuff. So it has to treat it with that seriousness. But the interesting thing is, if you start shifting that perspective of, oh, these aren't pain, they're questions. Your mind's saying, I need help. Okay, just having that perspective, for one thing, means you can start dealing with it in a different way. You can start engaging with it. You can start solving some of these problems. And when you start cooperating with your mind, now you guys don't have to be on opposite sides of the table anymore. Now you can start cooperating. Now it doesn't have to scream as loud to get your attention, which means those feelings and stuff don't have to be as intense, right? And it becomes less scary to kind of face some of this stuff. But the other piece is a physical wound, or physical pain comes from a physical wound that's caused by physical trauma. Makes perfect sense. The narrative is this: emotional pain comes from emotional wounds caused by emotional trauma. Fair enough. But that's based on how we're choosing to interpret that process. If every emotion I experience is just a question my mind is asking me, then they're not pain. It's my interpretation of the world. Nothing more, nothing less, which means it's not coming from a wound. And if there's no emotional wounds, there's nothing to heal. I'm done with that process, right? And it also means it's not caused by trauma because nobody's making me feel anything. That's my interpretation of the world. That's how I'm seeing it, which means that any event that you call traumatic is just a situation I'm in where I'm facing a challenge of some kind and my mind is screaming at me for help, screaming at me for trying to help it, and I don't have an answer. And that's pretty much it. Am I minimizing the horrible stuff that we go through? Absolutely freaking not. But there's a beautiful study by the Department of Defense that was trying to figure out why some people get PTSD and some people don't. You got 40 guys in platoon, get hit, ambushed, a couple people die. Some people get PTSD, most of them don't. Why? Well, they found out that it was highly correlated with trait neuroticism, right? A high tendency towards negative thinking, anxiety, negative opinion of yourself, right? So if you're walking into these situations with this predisposition to seeing everything through a negative lens, much higher chance that you're going to blame yourself for it and go down this PTSD road. But that's based on this idea that they're all painful, these painful emotions, right? You're blaming yourself. It's your fault. It's confirming all these negative opinions of yourself, right? But when you're looking at things through the lens of, these are just questions, right? This is not who you are. This is just a situation. It ain't your fault. It's not your problem. You are facing a challenge you could not overcome. Welcome to being human.
Yeah.
Right? But you're still breathing. So you found a way to navigate it in one way, shape, or form. So you overcame that challenge in some way, shape, or form. Didn't say it was pretty. Didn't say you didn't take your hits, right? Like, God knows I've been there a time or two. But you did make it through. And fundamentally, if the world tries to destroy you, throws everything at you in the kitchen sink, at the end of it all, you're still standing. Who actually won?
Yeah.
So in a lot of ways, you didn't actually lose. You got it right good enough to get yourself through it. You didn't actually lose because you're a survivor. Start looking at things through that lens. Just really start shifting.
Yeah.
How you're processing the world, how you're processing things about yourself.
Nice. Love that. So who do you work with right now? I mean, do you work with like corporate clients, helping their like leadership team? Do you help leaders help their employees? Do you help just people who want to do that?
Yeah.
Who's your main client?
Quite frankly, right now, anybody that wants to do this work, I'm more than willing to work for. If you want to step up and do this, I'm 100% happy to help you. It takes a certain kind of person to do this work because in order to go down there, you got to be able to face all the things you don't like about yourself. You got to own that. All those things you've been trying to disprove forever, you got to let this stuff be true long enough to do something about it. And that takes a lot of self-awareness and a lot of strength and a lot of resolve to do that, right? My perfect clients are, quite frankly, professional executives that you're rocking and rolling, you're doing some good work, but you're really kind of stuck in your groove. There's something more that you should be doing with your life. There's something more satisfaction-wise you should be getting. Great. You're locked in for a particular purpose. Talk about this in my book, Being Stuck on the Treadmill. There's the one thing you get to do. Chase the carrot or you get the stick. Great. Let's take that away so you can actually build something bigger. Take all that talents and instead of just putting points on the scoreboard, do something bigger. Stop playing like entrepreneur like Alex Ramosi and Grant Cardone and start being more like Elon Musk. Let's change the world, right? The other place is that other side of the coin. There's a lot of veterans out there who are struggling because there's all kinds of stuff that they go through.
Yeah.
Talking about PTSD, neuroticism. Well, if you're going through this process, you're changing all this negative opinions of yourself, a negative view of the world, changing pain from emotions from pain to question. Well, that makes a massive change, a massive shift in what they're going through, right? So no matter where you're at in that process, if you're dedicated to self-improvement, whether you've done a lot of work, you're still kind of in the hole, let's get you out, let's get you moving, let's finish that journey. Because at the end of the day, where I really want to help to get people to is a core set of understanding, a core set of beliefs that says, number one, there's nothing to fix. There never was. I'm not the problem. There's nothing healed that never was. Emotions aren't pain. They're not trauma. That's not a thing. I'm good enough as I am to deserve whatever I choose. And I don't have to prove it to anybody, not even myself. And if this is the foundation that you're operating from, if this is the reality you're living in, if this is the lens through which you view everything in the world, it's an incredibly powerful place to navigate from.
Yeah, I'm sure the transition from the military, because that's where you hear a lot of this stuff that they come back with PTSD. Is it? I know it's a combination of survivor guilt. It's a combination of could I have done something more at that point, and just transitioning back into a world that doesn't play by the same rules that you were trained to follow and That's tough. That's got to be tough.
Yeah, and even if you don't come back with PTSD, that transition can be really hard because the military world is very unique and very specific, right? You know exactly what you need to do to move up the ranks. You need to know exactly what to do to qualify at every stage of it. You know exactly what your purpose is. You know exactly what your mission is. There's always something big in you. You get in the civilian world. Is there any of that there? Nope. All the frameworks and stuff you've been using to navigate the world and improve stuff to yourself and be and your entire identity does not conform to the civilian world at all. So now you're kind of lost, like, shoot, like, what am I supposed to do now? And that can be a really hard shift.
There were a set of rules that you were given that everybody is following, and now you step out into, and those rules aren't there anymore.
Yeah, everybody was playing the same game, and now everybody's playing a million different games, and nobody's got any rules. None of them written down anywhere. You have no idea what that is. And so now you have to navigate a completely different environment. And if the military was a place where you're getting your meaning and your identity and everything else, if that was how you're defining yourself, that's a hard shift because now you have to create a different you and a different identity in order to be able to figure out how to be.
Yeah. Is the military doing enough to help soldiers transition, or could they do more?
I think they're doing what they can based on kind of how they understand things, right? Because they're looking at it from, you need to get you in a different job. They need you in a different profession. They're not necessarily looking at it from an identity perspective. They're not looking at it kind of the way I do, in that a lot of people join the military as part of that treadmill, as their escape from something, right? Or they join the military as that calling and that purpose, okay? Well, the people who are on the treadmill, if that's their identity, like, that's going to be a really rough transition out because they don't have a carrot to chase anymore. They don't have a scoreboard that works anymore. That's a really hard thing. People are coming there for the calling, like normal transition stuff. If you're trying to get a new job, that's not a new calling. That's not a new mission. It's not a new purpose, right? So I think that we could definitely do a much better job of figuring out why somebody's there in the first place. Like, what it was that got them there? What is it that they're getting out of the military? So we can understand what they need to shift and transition in the civilian world, right? Do you need to go from military to another government thing? That's a lot of it. Military to government contractor works really well for a lot of people because you're essentially just doing the same job, doing the same thing, and just wearing different clothes, different color badge. Or do you need something more? Are you just fine? Go have fun, do your business thing. You're gonna go bar, cool, do that. Or is there something more purpose-wise we need to help you figure out? So I think it's just a lack of attention to motive and meaning and purpose and the why. So you can actually help them find that motive and meaning, purpose, and why for the next step.
Wow. Yeah, that why is important.
Oh yeah.
So in a culture that kind of rewards the being on that hamster wheel, that treadmill.
Yeah.
How do we get off of that treadmill without feeling like a failure?
It's really interesting. Kind of like several years ago, back when I was still doing a lot of this work, I was trying to be like, okay, I'm an entrepreneur, outstanding, want to be successful, want to make a 7-figure business, right? It's like, okay, I need X number of clients, charging this much. That's going to give me Y, Z amount per month. Outstanding 7-figure. I just have to figure out how to get the marketing machine to pull in that number of clients, right? I was sitting there, I was like, man, I'm really just like not feeling this. Like, I'm not excited by this. I'm not driven by this. Everybody around me is like really driven by this. I'm just not. And I was kind of banging my head against the wall. And I remember one day I was doing some work on myself, and I told you I kind of gave up on life really young. Had to have that reason to keep going. That was all, save the world, serve the greater purpose. And July 2020 was when I finally realized, okay, I do want to live. Started that process, right? And I'm sitting there going, it's like, wait a second. I'm trying to find the next reason to keep going, the next scoreboard to use, the next carrot to chase to keep myself going. But I want to live. So they don't have to have a reason to keep living, which means I don't have to justify my existence anymore, right? And that broke my brain so hard. It's like, I felt like I was in psychedelics for like 3 days. There was that foundational shift that I needed to make, right? But from that day forward, it was not about the scoreboard anymore, right? That sort of stuff doesn't really matter. It's about what is my mission? What is my purpose, right? My mission is to end human suffering, unleash the fullness of human potential to the maximum extent possible for me to engineer his lifetime. That doesn't have to do with dollars and cents of success. That doesn't have any, there's no way, how are you supposed to measure that, right? And so it's about not needing to keep score. Once you stop needing to keep score, once you stop needing that external validation to prove how good you are, that external validation to make yourself feel good or whatever, then you can let go of all the score baits and success and all that other stuff. It doesn't become relative anymore. And you can focus on that deeper mission, purpose, fulfillment, whatever that is. Now, that's a hard thing to do in a culture where everybody's like chase the external validation and everybody's coming from a place where it's like, all right, I'm not good enough and trying to prove stuff. It's really hard. But I think that's kind of like why I put Winter Peace together in the first place. Is say, hey, the reason why you're going after a lot of this stuff, the reason you can't take your foot off the gas is this. This is the real problem you're trying to solve. Here's a way to solve it. So you can get the frick out the treadmill, stop playing that game, and do something more interesting with your life.
Nice. And so when you're working with somebody, how long does that typically take? Is there like an average? You can say we can usually do this in a month, 2 months.
Getting somebody to that space is 4 beliefs young. Nothing wrong with me, nothing to heal, good enough, don't have to prove it. There's a core set of work we do that's over about 3 sessions, right? That's to do all the foundational stuff, right? Now, there's no way to know how much work we need to do until we start digging in your back of your head. There isn't, right? So sometimes we got to do some work on the front end, get you ready for it. Sometimes we need to do some cleanup on the back end. Fair enough. I had one client that came to me. He'd been abused basically his entire life, done a bunch of work with psychologists, gotten nowhere. So he's bringing like all of his trauma, everything just completely unresolved, right? All of his fears and pains and everything. So we had to do like 6 sessions working through stuff to a point where he could actually do that foundational work. But as soon as it was there, 3 sessions, we're good to go. Typically 3 or 4 is all we really need. Do them about a week apart so we can probably wrap things up in a month if you're ready for it. Because again, you got to be ready for it. You got to be willing to face things that you don't like. You got to be willing to accept things as true that you don't want to be true. You have to be willing to be wrong about a lot of things. Because whatever story you're telling about yourself is wrong. Because if you're right, you would have fixed this stuff by now. So it's got to be wrong in some way, shape, or form. And since it could be anything, you got to be able to question everything. A lot of people really aren't willing to let go of some of that stuff. You know, it's hard. It's hard. It's not easy. But if you're willing to do it, yeah,
you've got that. You've got the people that aren't willing to open themselves up to admit, right, what's going on. The courage to actually say, you know, I want to explore all this stuff. But then I think, personal opinion, I think that there are therapists that don't necessarily want to heal you because then they're not needed anymore. You know what I mean? It's like, and I mean, people say that about the pharmaceutical companies that they actually cured, they would be out of a job. If the therapist actually cured you, they'd be out of a job. How much of that plays in, do you think?
There's certainly some of that, right? There's certainly some of that where the person, the doctor, the pharmacist, the therapist is like, oh, I have, my source of external validation is all these people who need me. Right. So I don't want to let them go because then I don't want to have that external validation. But I think that's a pretty small percentage. I think that the bigger issue is that we don't sit down and talk about the limitations of the different tools we have. Right. All models are wrong. Some models are useful. Every single technique, every single therapy, every single approach has limits. Right. There's a set of underlying assumptions and principles that govern how that thing works, which governs which problems you can solve and to what degree. Talk therapy has massive limits on what you can accomplish. Why? Because you can't touch anything in the subconscious mind, which is where 90% of the problems are coming from. So of course there's going to be massive limits. But at the same time, that's also the best place to get these people a lot of new understandings and frameworks and coping mechanisms and life skills that I can't teach you in hypnosis, right? Psychedelics are another beautiful thing where it's just opening up the subconscious mind. You're cracking open a lot of stuff, creating a lot of new possibility, creating a lot of new opportunities. Love it. Definitely a big part of my journey. But that's an uncontrolled process. You don't get to go see what you want. There's limits to the amount of change you can do while you're down there. And once that door is closed, after the ride is done, everything is conscious adaptation. How do I navigate this understanding? So there's limits there. Hypnosis, again, I get to open that door, go down where I want, fix what I want. But it's a voluntary process. You got to let me. You got to let me lead you through it, which means you got to be willing to do whatever I do to go down there. That's a hard thing to do. So to me, it's like, okay, if you can recognize the limitations of what you can do, if you can recognize when you're starting to hit that point of diminishing returns, send them on to the next thing. Right? You're here, great, we got you to this point, great, now you do this, great, now you do this, great, now you do this, great, now you're doing this other thing over here. Because once you're done working with me, I've solved a particular set of problems, but those aren't the only problems you have. Right? You're going to need other stuff. I'm not going to teach you how to do dating. I'm divorced twice. I'm the wrong guy to ask. Do not ask me. I do not have the answer, right? I'm not going to tell you how to be an entrepreneur or do marketing. That's not it, right? I'm going to tell you how to be a coach. That's not, I can't do that. That's not a skill set I have. Those are other kinds of problems. I'm going to get this stuff here fixed so you got lined up, everything's kind of ready to go. And then you need to go do somebody else, go to somebody else to get the rest of it. Recognize your limits. And I can solve this piece. This is a piece of puzzle. You need to be here. Once you're done, go away.
Wow.
But that's my approach.
So much. No, it's fascinating stuff. I love this. Having family members that have dealt with things like that, ADHD, autism, everything. And just the wherever those limiting beliefs come from. You see people every day that just struggle with that. It's like, how could you think that? You have everything in front of you, you have access to all these things. How can you think that? And it's like, they can't describe it. It's just, that's the way they are. That's the way they've always been. That's all they know.
Well, I think that here's an interesting perspective and something I've really kind of found helps. You're growing up, you're young, things don't work. Like, okay, I'm the problem. There's something wrong with me. I'm not good enough. Something I need to fix in order to become good enough. Great. So what do? Very rational thing is, okay, what's wrong? What's broken? What do I need to fix? So you start looking around. Right? Oh, this teacher says I'm stupid. That must be the problem. Well, I can't fix stupid, so I guess I'm just screwed. Right? Oh, it's ADHD. Fair enough. This is how I'm built. There's stuff I can do, but now medications, maybe that's just going to make some sense. Great. For me, it's like, I just knew that I was freaking different. And that was 100% true. There was nothing I could do about that, and I was just screwed. And that was true, and still is kind of true in the way. Right? There's still a lot of difficulties I have. But the point was, that was the easy thing I could identify. Didn't mean it's actually a problem. Oh, the teacher says I'm stupid. Really easy to identify, makes sense, fits with the pattern, fair enough. That's the answer. And you stop looking. As soon as you have a good enough answer that makes sense, you kind of stop looking for anything else.
Right.
And the problem is, because we're doing this when we're young, we don't have a lot of sophistication. The answers we come up with are generally wrong. But once that becomes the truth, especially here's another piece. If it gives you an excuse to stop trying and stop banging your head against the wall, that's actually sometimes safer.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the frustration comes where I've been trying and trying and trying and nothing freaking works. And is this ever going to end? Because if I lose hope, that's when you really get deep in the hole. And maybe that's when you don't get out. So if you can find a reason to stop trying and just accept the situation that you're in, no matter how good or bad it is, that can be safer.
Yeah.
It can be safer.
Wow. Yeah. So I'm looking at the clock here. Let's talk about courage.
Sure.
I always like to ask, like, where did that courage come from when you decide to go out on your own and do X? When you join in the military, writing your book, learning all these different skills and diving deep into this stuff. Where did that courage come from?
I didn't have a choice. Short version, I didn't have a choice. And what I mean by that is, one of the interesting things about being autistic is I can't lie to myself. People say, oh, just fake it till you make it, or, oh, I'm going to believe this. Like, no, I can't. I cannot deny the reality of the situation, and I cannot lie to myself. The reason I joined the Marine Corps is like, I'm sitting in Kansas, like, this is not working for me. This is never going to work for me. If I stay here, I am toast. Get me out. Get me out. I don't care. Just get me out, right? And then, 2019, 2020, I'm sitting there, it's like, my life is not working. This does not work at all, right? And 2021 in particular, got the beginning, it was like, okay, I am done with this. Like, I'm done. I will do whatever the hell is necessary to fix my head. Because I knew it's like, I've been starving for my entire life, not being able to get what I need. Never been able to figure it out, just not been able to get it. And I'm like, I am done suffering. If I'm going to starve forever, I'm out. So I either have to figure out a way to fix this or eat a bullet. Like, that's it. There are two choices. Either I figure this out or die trying. One of the two. So it wasn't necessarily courage. It was desperation. And sometimes that works better, right? Courage is hard. Courage is voluntarily going to the hardest, darkest parts of yourself and saying, I'm going to go anyway. For me, it wasn't a choice. I didn't have a choice. It was desperation. It's like, do or die. Like, I don't have a choice. For a lot of people, they're pulled forward by an ideal, an identity, and values they have. Like, I would rather go here and face this pain than not live up to this ideal, live up to this identity. Think about it in the military, right? You get guys charging machine gun nests, that's freaking suicide.
Yeah.
But doing that was like less dangerous in a way than letting themselves. They would rather do that than be a coward and let their buddies down and let the mission fail or whatever that is, right? That identity, that higher purpose, that higher calling is what can get you through so much. That is where courage really comes from. I think it comes from love. I think it comes from love of something bigger than yourself, right? That courage came from love of me. Like, I love myself too much to let myself die. I love myself too much to let myself continue to suffer. And I will do whatever's necessary to drag myself out of hell. So I did.
And figure this out. And then the book came out of that, because that
Yes.
takes courage too, to be able to, I mean, to write a book, to put yourself out there in paper and stuff, to critique and everything like that. That takes courage too.
Sort of, but it's more like, after I was done with all this work, like I can't suffer anymore. Like I will never suffer again, mentally, emotionally. If emotions aren't pain, you can't. Like kind of by definition, right? So I'm never going to be in this situation where I want to end my life again. There's never going to be anything I have to escape. Why in the world would I hold that back? Think of how many people, like, I found out I had bipolar in June of 23. I had an acute manic episode and then a psychotic break. As part of this process of going in this mania, I was walking down, on my daily walk, and it hit me. It's like, wait a second, I can't suffer anymore. I have like the answer, right? Again, I'm kind of going insane, so I'm like a little bit grandiose, but I've got the answer. I've got the way. And there's 7.5 billion people on this planet. And every single one of them suffering completely unnecessarily, because I've got the answer, which means that every bit of human suffering from that moment on that I don't figure out how to fix everything in the world is my fault. That's heavy, right? I was like, I can't live with myself if this is how this is, right? Which was bad, because then I basically said I have to solve human suffering in order to continue to live, which was dumb. Don't put that on your shoulders.
It's a big calling.
It's a big calling. It's like that's stuff. But it's not even that. It's not that it's a big calling. It's like it has to happen or I'm dead, right? Like that was really dumb. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, I've got an answer, a set of answers that I don't really see anywhere else. I've got a theory and a framework that solves some really big problems I don't see being solved any other way. And here's the book. Like, here's what I figured out. Here's the process. Here's the framework. Here's what I understand. This is going to get you moving in the right direction. Use it, go, knock yourself out, have fun. If this is for you, take it. And if it's not for you, fair enough. Go do something else. Perfectly fine, right? Because it's not my space and not my place to say what you should and should not do, what you should and should not, how you should and should not live your life, right? And this is an answer. This is my answer to that question. Doesn't mean it's the only answer. It might not even be the best one, right? This is how I solve this problem. Here's my solution. If it works for you, great. If not, do something else. That's perfectly fine. If you want to critique it, beautiful. Show me where I'm wrong. Show me where I'm wrong, please, so I can make this thing better. Yes. You have to try hard because I'm good at this. But if you can show me when I'm wrong, by all means, I will have that debate all day long, right? Because the only thing they can do is get us closer to truth, which gives us better solutions, which makes everything better, which ends, reduces suffering, unleashes potential, which is what I'm all about. So please, yes, come at me, please. Nice. Bring your best, because I don't play soft. But
pack a lunch.
Let's go. Yeah, pack a lunch. Let's go.
Nice. What do you look for in a leader?
Humility. That right there, humility, is probably the single biggest quality I look for in a leader, because that says you're willing to be wrong. If you're not willing to be wrong, if you're not willing to recognize your limitations, how the heck can I trust you? You can't make good decisions for yourself or others if that's the case.
Yeah. But a lot of small, mid-sized business owners and even other CEOs and things like that, they feel they have to be the smartest person in the room.
Yep, that's entirely true. And that's a shame. But that's okay, because those kinds of people get outcompeted by the guys that are humble. Nice. It's a beautiful thing about those kinds of environments. It's evolution at its finest, nature red and tooth and claw. Like, if you got the humility, the other guy doesn't, he's going to be boxed in, which means you can leverage everything much more effectively, which means you win in the end.
Nice.
So by all means, play that game. You go ahead. I won't play this one. I won't win.
That's fun. Yep. Like my wife says, underestimate me. That'll be fun.
Please. Yeah, have fun. Have fun with that. Go for it. That'll work out really well for you.
Yep. In your previous lives, you had employees working for you?
No, on occasion I'd have a few people under me, but quite frankly, it was a lot more coordination with other people, right? Like I was a guy that was managing this product and I was coordinating with a bunch of other offices, a bunch of other services. And that's a really interesting game, because you're competing, you're sort of trying to manage your priorities and your objectives with everybody else's, plus play the politics office game. And, we're talking about trying to do like counter-proliferation work, counter-terrorism work. You're working with foreign intelligence services, right, who are not your friends. You are not on the same
side. Their own agendas, right?
They have their own agendas, right? So it was a really interesting place. It's like, okay, this little space we're cooperating on. These places we have, shared interests. There's other stuff we don't. So we're going to play nice here, and we're going to play not so nice over here. So there's a really interesting dance of like, I know you're going to play this game. You know I'm going to play this game. We're going to play nice here. You're going to try and do some stuff. I'm going to try and do stuff. And this is just a dance. It's kind of a gentleman's agreement. This is what we're doing. Mm-hmm. It's an interesting game to play. But fundamentally, the thing that taught me the most, that really gives me an edge, is like, if you and I have shared interests, if you and I have a common goal, then I don't care about the rest of it. We don't have to be aligned on everything. We just have to be able to work together and play nice on this. All right. Now, I'm not going to let you on my team entirely if we're not shared in a much bigger way. But if we're just like working together in a project, fine, fair enough. There's a common goal, right? I've always had this phrase, we're all patriotic Americans trying to do the right thing. If I'm working with this law enforcement agency and the State Department, there's other people here, and everybody's got all these complete interests, of course there's going to be friction. But we're trying to do fundamentally the same thing, trying to do the right thing for the country and the world and everything else. Fair enough. Yeah. Kind of set some of that ego aside. And sometimes that means that my priorities have to take second place. Yeah. Is the way it is.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, and I love the answer of humility. If I was to bump into any of your colleagues in the past or any folks you're working with currently right now, what would they tell me about your leadership style? What kind of leadership are you?
Oh man. Remember I found out I was bipolar later on in life. Let's just say that being autistic and bipolar and doing office politics was not a pretty sight. I like to say that I've graduated from the Hulk Smash School of Diplomacy, summa cum laude. Well, sometimes there's a phrase we used to have in the Marine Corps. It's like, if brute force isn't working, you're not using enough brute force. And I might have taken that to heart a little bit too much. But sometimes. And all these like political stuff, everybody's just kind of dancing around and playing these games. It's like sometimes you just need somebody to walk in and just like smash things with a hammer. It's like, I'm sorry, we're done. Do this. This is reality. Like, let's just own this. And sometimes you need a guy like that. And sometimes a guy like that gets in the way. So I may or may not have gotten fired a couple times because of the Hulk smash diplomacy style I may have had. It definitely has its ups and downs, And it's something I'm still trying to learn, is that a bit more light hand, a little bit more subtlety, a little bit more finesse, a little bit more compassion. It's not something that was easy for me to figure out, Yeah. My own life wasn't really.
Not something they teach.
No, they really don't.
These are things that you have to kind of come to through other avenues. Yeah. They don't teach it in school. They don't teach it in home. So.
Yeah. There's a guy named Sean Ryan, a former Navy SEAL, former CIA operator, runs a podcast, great guy, phenomenal podcast. Had a guy named Travis Haley, Blackwater CEO type. And Travis is like, your son's going in the Marines. What would you teach him, to make him better, to help him really succeed? He says, the one thing I would teach him was compassion. Because if you can't know how to love, if you don't have anything to love, how the heck are you supposed to have something worth fighting for? Like, love, compassion is what drives everything. If you don't have that, rest well. And for it coming from somebody who's as much of a warrior as those two guys, for the answer to come out of their mouth of the way to succeed is compassion, wow. You have my attention. Yeah. You have my attention.
Love that. Very cool. Ryan, this has been awesome. And I'm definitely going to have you back on because there are so many things I want to dive into.
Please.
And if people want to learn more about you and what you do and how you can help them, how can they best do that? What's your website?
My website is www.ryanthehypnotist.com. I offer a free 45-minute consultation. We'll sit down, take a look at what's going on in your life, what's not working, tell you why things are going the way they are, so you actually have some more understanding of things, and talk about how you can get you that set of beliefs. Nothing wrong with me, nothing to heal, good enough, don't have to prove it. I would suggest that people just start with my book, though. It's on Amazon. It's called Winner Peace: How to End in a Conflict, Make Success Inevitable. It walks you through pretty much the exact process I take all of my clients to start to finish. So the extent that you can get all the benefit of working with me one-on-one in a book form, that'll do it.
Nice. Very cool. Are you active on LinkedIn?
I am. Okay. It's Ryan W. Christensen on LinkedIn.
Perfect. Well, I will have those links down in the show notes, along with a link to your book on Amazon. Is it available on your website, or
you can get to it from the Amazon as well? It's all handled through Amazon. You can get to it from my website, though.
Okay. Very cool. I will have those links in the show notes. So, Ryan, thanks again, and I will definitely be reaching out to do a part 2.
I'm looking forward to it. Love these discussions.
Awesome. Thanks, sir. All right. Listeners, hope you guys were taking notes. A lot of good information here. So much to unpack. So much stuff, because we do this to ourselves. We take these childhood traumas and things, and we carry them with us thinking that's exactly who we are and that's what we deserve. And it's like,
Doesn't have to be true.
Doesn't have to be true at all. So yeah, hope you guys are taking notes. Share this episode with your family, friends, colleagues, anybody who is struggling in their life. I think this would be a great episode to introduce them to. And stick around, because there's always more coming. And that's it for me, Coach Harlan, saying so long for now.